Hello and welcome to the Grand Hotel in Point Clear, where Capital Journal is on location at the Business Council of Alabama's annual Government Affairs Conference. Each year, the state's top elected officials and business leaders gather here at the Grand to discuss policy and politics, build relationships, and help chart the course for Alabama's economy. This year, BCA is celebrating its 40th year with the largest government affairs conference ever. Capital Journal has been given special access to document this conference. Our coverage will feature a conversation with the state's congressional delegation, in-depth presentations on the state of the economy and business environment, and feedback from conference attendees, from state lawmakers to business owners who make up BCA's membership. I'll be interviewing BCA President Helena Duncan and Chairman Kevin Savoy of Great Southern Wood, U.S. Senator Katie Britt, Congressman Robert Adderholt, Congressman Shamari Figures, and Alabama Senate President Pro Tem Garland Gudger. Jeff Sanders kicks off our coverage with a look at some of the key issues at this BCA conference.
Governor Kay Ivey helped open the Business Council of Alabama's Governmental Affairs Conference, welcoming hundreds of business and political leaders for a weekend of conversation about the state's future.
Here in Alabama, we enjoy strong bipartisan working relationships among the legislative and executive branches. We may not always agree, even within our own party, but Pro Tem Gudger, Leader Singleton, Speaker Ledbetter, and Leader Daniels are always willing to sit down and work through the issues.
From there, the conference floor turned into a series of panel discussions. Topics range from workforce development and infrastructure upgrades to rural health care, agriculture, and the impact of federal policy on Alabama businesses. Industry leaders, lawmakers, and policy experts shared ideas on how to strengthen the economy and prepare for future growth.
We can work together to understand what the barriers of growth are, and then we also get together public-private partnerships, and we work together on finding workable solutions. As we continue to work as partners, there is absolutely nothing that we cannot accomplish in the state of Alabama.
The conversations were backed by fresh polling from Signal, showing what Republican primary voters say matters most heading into the 2026 elections. That includes inflation and cost of living, taxes and government spending, illegal immigration and border security, infrastructure and roads, and jobs and the economy.
Were people who felt that they didn't have job growth where they were, that they were yearning for that, but they felt that they were entry level and everything around them was very attainable, but to grow, they felt they didn't fully have that yet. And a lot of this too was talk about wanting to attract larger and bigger business to Alabama.
Is prepared to meet the needs of the growing economy that we have here in the state is important. And so we continue both in the Big Beautiful Bill. There are a number of those things that I think you'll continue to see, whether it's permitting reform or other things, be able to move forward so we can achieve that.
People that work in this state, which, by the way, has an individual median income of just north of $31,000. And so we have to take this issue seriously and continue to develop and work on those opportunities to enhance life outcomes and enhance healthcare opportunities across this district.
And it may come as no surprise that business and political leaders say the ideas and conversations shared here at the BCA conference will carry forward, strengthening relationships, shaping policy, and driving new ideas to move forward Alabama's economy. Reporting from the Grand Hotel in Point Clear, I'm Jeff Sanders for Capital Journal.
Thank you, Jeff. And joining me next are BCA President Helena Duncan and Chairman Kevin Savoy of Great Southern Wood. Thank you both for coming by.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, let me just say congratulations. It's been a great conference. Record-breaking attendance from what I understand. Is that correct?
Absolutely. We had almost 100 more than we did last year, as though we were not busing from the seams last year.
Right. Well, what goes into preparing for a conference like this? Because you've got pretty much the entire congressional delegation, most of the legislature, the governor, lots of moving parts, but you're also trying to put on a program that really is meaningful and substantive, right?
Absolutely. So this process is very, very granular thought through. We want to make sure that people are leaving with context. It's important the work that we have done, and it's important for the people of Alabama to know about that work. So we do spend a little time making sure that we are displaying that, and we're explaining the policies and things that we're put in place and why we've done it the way we've done it. But then it's also an opportunity for us to look forward, to think about what is next for Alabama business. What are the things that we need to focus on? Also, then we have the federal people in place, and they also get to hear that, and we get to hear the things they're working on. Our synergy is getting better every day between Washington and Montgomery, and that is critical to the growth of this community. So every panel, every discussion, every speech, everything that you see here this weekend is thought through to making Alabama a better place to do business. And what does our community, what does our supporters, what does the business and the elected officials need to hear from us as a collective? We're representing over 3,500 businesses, which is over 1 million working Alabamians. And so we're representing them in that space when we're here, making sure that we're getting the message out.
Well, Kevin, let me ask you about that because, coming from the private sector, one of the largest companies in the Southeast, why is it important for companies like y'all's to invest your time, your financial resources in the Business Council of Alabama, in the public sector, if you will? Why is that so important? What do you get out of it? Why do businesses like y'all's invest like that?
Well, I get asked that question a lot. I get asked that question, well, what is BCA? What does BCA do? And the advocacy piece is so important. So Helena mentioned it, maintaining a business climate in our state that is pro-business at the legislative level. So not only is her team involved in making sure that our legislators are passing legislation that are pro-business or supporting business, they're also involved in working with the governor's office and Department of Commerce and the Workforce Board on all the other ancillary issues that need to be focused on
sometimes
to
behind
promote
the
business.
scenes, yeah.
Exactly. Our family has been involved in politics. Jimmy was on Governor Wallace's campaign when he was in college, and he's always impressed upon us how important it is to be involved in the legislative process, provide input, provide guidance, because we have to maintain that environment so that the state can continue to grow. We create jobs. We're making an environment where Alabama moves forward. So we believe in it strongly.
Oh, yeah. I remember Mr. Rain coming on and sharing memories about he and Governor Ivey, George McMillan, and some of those early days.
Joe Fine.
Absolutely.
He worked for Joe Fine.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you all both about this polling that you demonstrated today. You contracted with Signal to have this polling. One of the things that struck out to me was asking voters what they want their elected officials to focus on. And overwhelmingly they said economic issues, pocketbook issues, rather than the social issues. And yet a lot of times that's all we hear are the kind of culture war things that go on. So talk about that. What was your reaction to seeing those numbers come in to say voters actually want their leaders to focus on economics rather than some of the, red meat, more divisive kind of issues?
That's right. So at BCA, that's what we work on is the economy, whether it's job creations, whether it's incentives to get more business here. That's what we do. So we were thrilled to see. It was like a validation of the work that we've been doing at BCA. A few years ago, as you recall, Todd, we established the public-private partnership. And that was all about bringing the synergy to the table, state leadership with state business leaders, and let's talk about how to move our economy forward. So this validates that all the work and efforts that has been put into place over the years, it started back, if you think about Rebuild Alabama. And so we started there, and then infrastructure was another public-private partnership, then workforce, and now the energy bill that we did, powering growth this year. All of this is like building blocks to a better Alabama. So this tells us, hey guys, you guys are pointing it in the right direction. Now our voters probably have not seen the fruit of this labor as much because this is all very new. You know, foundations are being laid, but it's there and it's going to grow and it's only going to get better. So for our voters to say, hey, over almost 60% is saying, hey, stay focused, work on the economy and let these social issues work out somewhere else, is exactly what Alabama needs. We are a pro-business state, and that validates that what we're doing as a pro-business state, the mission, the direction in which we're moving in, is exactly what our constituents and the people in Alabama need for us to focus on. We were thrilled to get these results.
Yeah, but I was surprised because social media, news, everything is, you know, the social issues. And I agree with Helena. I mean, we were pleasantly surprised with this information, and it validates BCA's vision and its purpose, and I think it's good for our legislators to see that information as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you've got about the entire elected leadership of the state seeing that, that's a message sent for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, look, again, congratulations on another fantastic conference. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of it and to document this. I mean, it's unique. It's the largest premier gathering of Alabama's business and political leadership. So thanks for letting Capital Journal be a part of it.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you for
appreciate
having
you
us.
being here. Yes, thank
Enjoyed
you.
it. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the online video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
Alabama's Gulf Coast is renowned for its white sand beaches. Bordering the Gulf of Mexico, it is an important part of the quality of life for many of the state's citizens and one of the state's greatest economic and environmental assets. The white sandy beaches of Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, and Dauphin Island are popular vacation destinations for Alabamians and out-of-state tourists. The fine quality of the sand and gentleness of the surf make for some of the prettiest beaches in the world and are the top tourist destination in the state.
And welcome back to Capital Journal's coverage of the BCA conference here at the Grand Hotel in Point Clear. As I mentioned at the top, members of Alabama's congressional delegation are here at the BCA conference, and they sat down for a panel discussion to talk about what's happening in the nation's capital and how it's impacting Alabama. APT Washington correspondent Alex Engel has that report.
Here in Point Clear, Alabama's delegation touched on health care, energy infrastructure, and agriculture during their panel conversation.
Federal lawmakers are back in Alabama for the August recess, making a stop at the BCA conference. Republicans are touting the new tax breaks and spending cuts law, including the $50 billion fund for rural hospitals. At least $500 million will go toward Alabama.
Got to help these people stay alive, these facilities stay alive. But this bill goes a long way to do that. I mean, it's just a lot of money. $50 billion is nothing to sneeze at.
The funds were added into the legislation later on to offset the Medicaid cuts that could hurt rural hospitals. Democrat Shamari Figures did not support the GOP-led package, but he agreed with the delegation on the need to support struggling hospitals.
And I don't care if your name is Sabin or Tuberville. You cannot close a recruiting pitch to a resident, to a company, to a retiree, to an industry when that pitch begins with, we don't have a hospital. And so this is a significant issue.
Also during the delegation's panel, energy was a key topic. Senator Katie Britt wants to see permitting reform and federal action aimed at boosting production.
We've got to have more access to energy and that reliability, making sure the grid is not only safe, but is prepared to meet the needs of the growing economy that we have here in the state is important.
Senator and gubernatorial candidate Tommy Tuberville compared the state's competition for energy to an SEC football schedule.
We're going to be fighting Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Florida, and they surround us, okay? And whoever gets the most energy, whoever plans for the future is going to win that race of getting manufacturing back to the state.
The bipartisan delegation also agreed on the need to incentivize farmers and pass a new farm bill. Reporting in Point Clear, Alex Engel, Capital Journal.
And joining me fresh off that stage from the congressional panel is United States Senator Katie Britt. Senator, thanks for coming by.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always good to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, we're here at the BCA conference. Really interesting presentations today about polling, economic polling. I was struck by this data that showed voters really want their elected officials to focus on economic issues, pocketbook issues, more so than social issues, which is interesting because sometimes when we're on social media, that's all we hear about is the divisive things. We're fighting with each other. As an elected official, what did you take away from seeing that data?
Well, I think obviously the more people learn about the One Big Beautiful Bill, the more they're going to realize that we're being responsive to that very thing, whether it's no tax on tips or no tax on overtime or even deductions for our seniors that are living on a fixed income. There are a lot of things in the Big Beautiful Bill that are going to address hardworking Americans being able to keep more of their hard-earned money. One of the things I was most proud of that we did in that bill, and I led the effort for, was actually updating the child care tax credits. So you hear a lot, Todd, about the child tax credit, which I'm proud that we made permanent and expanded by $200, but the work that I did specifically on this bill, we're updating tax codes that haven't been updated in almost 4 decades in some time. So we did both the CDCTC and the DCAP, one of which had not been updated since 1986. So believe me, the cost of child care has gone up since Reagan was in office. The other had not been updated since 2001. Additionally, we put another component in there of 45F. It hasn't been updated since 2001. What that does is allow businesses, both large and small, to actually be a part of the solution. Now, all of that to say is what we're trying to do is allow hardworking parents to keep more of their money, to make those decisions about what's best for their child, and then actually address this affordability and accessibility of childcare, which I hear from the top to the bottom of our state. Whether I am talking with our largest manufacturer, Todd, or our smallest business on Main Street, they say workforce and making sure that they can retain that quality workforce, not losing them to childcare issues, which we have found that 59% of people who have who are stay-at-home parents actually want to re-enter the workforce, but that affordability or accessibility of childcare is a problem. So this is one of those things that we've heard people on both sides of the aisle talk about for years, and I think it's really instructive that the Republican Party has become the big tent party, the party of parents, the party of hardworking Americans. We heard Americans on November 5th because if you look at this reconciliation bill, Democrats had 2 bites at the apple under the Joe Biden administration. They never tackled the affordability or accessibility of childcare. And the fact that we were able to update those, our very first run, so to speak, out of the gate, is something I'm really proud of. I hope more people learn about them so they actually take advantage of them. And then we're going to continue to carry that mantle. I'm proud to carry it and continue to look for ways to alleviate that for hardworking people across the country.
Well, also on the economic front is the issue of tariffs, right? The president's tariff policies. I mean, I don't know, we're all trying to figure it out, but a lot of concerns about that because, these tariffs a lot of times get passed on. Import taxes essentially get passed on to the consumer. What should we think about tariff policy? I mean, do you support these tariff policies?
Yeah, so what we're seeing obviously is for years America being taken advantage of on the world stage. And what President Trump has said is that we want to level the playing field. He believes that if you put America on a level playing field, that we're going to win every single time, and I do as well. When we're working to figure out how we onshore more jobs for Americans, that is critically important. Look, if we took nothing away from the pandemic in 2020, it was that we should onshore our critical supply chain, that we want to make sure that we don't just lead when it comes to innovation, but we actually lead when it comes to building as well. It's one thing to create these things, but then if we are dependent on our adversaries in some spaces to be able to actually achieve them, we're not putting America in the best place possible for success. And driving up American wages is also critically important. So what we've done is obviously he has been given the flexibility and the time to create those spaces. On many fronts, he has had just historic wins for the American people. It'll take some time for us to be able to let those cement, for the building to come back, and that won't happen overnight, but the commitments we've gotten from so many companies, whether it is Apple or some of our auto manufacturers, are going to be significant in creating the American dream for hardworking Americans. Now, we're not done yet. So to your point, there are some more outstanding trade deals that need to come together, but I have faith that President Trump will actually achieve that, whether it's with Mexico or Canada, or some of our other countries that we deal with quite frequently across the board. I believe when you see the success that he's created thus far, we'll continue to have that moving forward.
Speaking of the president, you've had to interact quite a bit with the administration on funding, right? I'm going back to the Greyhound situation, the Montgomery. You talked about that on stage just a moment ago. The Tuskegee situation. You had the education funding that was frozen, and you worked to get it unfrozen. NIH, all these things. I describe it almost as whack-a-mole. You're having to play whack-a-mole to get all this funding figured out and released for Alabama, which I understand. It takes a lot of work, and kudos to you. But should it ever have to happen? Should you have to be playing this game of whack-a-mole with the administration, considering this is funding that Congress has already appropriated? And what's that been like? What is your process? Who do you call?
Right. Well, I think it is my job to know and understand the needs of our state, to understand our strengths, to know our history, to ensure that it is preserved and celebrated, and work diligently to achieve that. So making sure that when things do come up, that I am well versed on the issue, and then figure out who the best point person is to call to either unlock that funding or to make sure that things are set in the right direction. Whether it was, obviously Pete Hegseth stepped in immediately when it came to the Tuskegee Airmen situation, and was so proud of his leadership in ensuring that they cemented their rightful place in the history, not just of our state, but our nation and the world. Same thing with making calls about whether it's the Montgomery bus stop or others. In particular, when I looked at the education money, I was proud to join 9 of my other colleagues to say, hey, this matters, and let's make sure that the money that we have appropriated is properly used. And then additionally, the NIH. So not only did I lead the letter and make sure that we are working diligently, and we've been working on this for quite some time. We've gotten actually Secretary Kennedy a number of times in the space, whether it's being hearings or other things, talking about the great work that's done in Alabama, the life-saving and life-changing research that we do here across our state. That's because we've been front and center, both in my conversations with him and making sure we're providing data to decision makers. So I led that letter when it came to NIH possible pocket rescissions with, I think there were 14 of us on that letter. And then when news media kind of broke that may not be the case and they may actually be rescinded, made sure I actually called the president myself. It was a great conversation with President Trump. He believes in finding cures. He believes in saving lives, and he believes in America leading the way. So that was a quick and easy conversation, ensuring that we have the proper funding to continue that research, not just here in our state, but across the country. So I think that's the role that I signed up for, right, Todd? I mean, I'm supposed to know Alabama best, and I'm supposed to be willing to step up when it's needed, and that's what I'm doing time and time again. And look forward, though, to the appropriations process to continuing to move forward right now. This is the problem in what we had under Chuck Schumer, which was not putting any of the marked up appropriations bills on the floor, wanting to hoard that power and hope to get an omnibus, only to ultimately get a CR in the end. If we do appropriations bills, there's more skin in the game. People have more opportunity to direct that funds where it needs to go, and then there's more buy-in and progress moving forward. You saw us do a rescission bill for the very first time in over 30 years because we lost the trust of the American people. Money that had been allocated to certain things was used far outside the mission of which it was intended, and the American taxpayer deserves better. So we're approaching this from a number of different ways, but I am proud to be a voice for the great things that happen in Alabama, and make sure that those are elevated, sometimes to the very highest level, so that we can make sure that we achieve results.
It's interesting you bring that up, the appropriations process, because I think the last time we talked on Capitol, or actually just after you got elected, we talked about Article 1 and Congress reasserting its Article 1 authority, because under the prior administration you had a lot of these arguments. But I'll have to say, a lot of times it just seems like Congress is ceding its authority to President Trump. There's no room for debate, no room for disagreement or anything. So how do you square that? Is it going to be an actual congressionally led, Article 1 led, appropriations process, or is it just going to be whatever the White House wants?
So I would have to respectfully disagree on that. I think probably a lot of what you're seeing is what the media ultimately wants you to see. We've had an unprecedented level of obstruction, both when Chuck Schumer was the leader of the Senate, when the Democratic Party was in control, not putting things like the appropriations bills on the floor, not moving things that had true bipartisan support forward, and yet we've seen that became the crux of our leadership election when we were looking to find a new Republican leader. Number one question on everyone's mind is, are you going to give power back to individual senators? Are you going to allow us to actually move bills through the process? And are you going to actually put the appropriations bills on the floor so we have an opportunity to speak for our constituents directly into how we're spending these dollars? Leader Thune has done a remarkable job, but yet again in the face of unprecedented obstruction. So if you're looking at what we've been able to achieve this Congress so far, we've sent more than 12 bills both through the House and Senate and to President Trump's desk. I was proud to have the very first bill, which was the Lake and Riley Act, where we, for the first time, actually dealt with immigration enforcement in over 30 years. Also, I've gotten Lulu's Law through the Senate. We look forward to getting that one through the House. But we've also gotten the Halt Fentanyl Act. We've gotten the Take It Down Act. We've gotten a number of important pieces of legislation to the president's desk. But there are many pieces of legislation, Todd, that are waiting to get floor time. We have over 120 bipartisan pieces of legislation that have been marked up in committee that are waiting for their moment on the floor. Now, one of those pieces of legislation is the Road to Housing Act. We know that housing has become unaffordable for Americans. Going back to your very first point about this is what people care about. They want economic security. They want a pathway to the American dream. I would argue to say most people's American dream, a component of that is being able to own their own home. Used to, people would own their own home at about 28 years old on average. Now it's about 38, 39 before you can buy your first home. We've got to make sure this becomes in reach. When you look at homelessness, there's pieces of this legislation that we want to even improve on and make sure that homelessness is addressed. It rose exponentially in 2023, even here in the state of Alabama. Some statistics say up to 40%. There's 11,000 children in the state that say that they consider themselves homeless. So I have a bill with Angela Also Brooks to actually address that. And so, Todd, all of these different components and a portion of the Road to Housing Act that I have with Senator Jack Reed, and there is making sure that we take programs that were built to help people get on their feet and create a glide path so they can actually do that. So we've got a lot of good things, right, that'll address issues that people are having and make the American dream more attainable, will make the country more prosperous, but they have to be able to see the floor. And right now what we're seeing is yet again unleveled precedent undue levels of obstruction from Chuck Schumer, and I just want to give you a little bit of a window into that. We have voted twice more than the House of Representatives have, and you have worked in Congress. That is unheard of. Some people say that we've been in session, I don't have the exact number, but over 30 days more than they have. We have been working around the clock, passing this legislation, one big beautiful bill, the legislations I mentioned, the rescissions about. We've actually passed appropriations bills on the floor all before August. But the nomination process has become so ridiculous when it comes to throwing up every roadblock possible is what Chuck Schumer is doing to prevent President Trump from getting his people in place. And I think your viewers need to take a look at this, and I encourage you to do this. If you go back to the exact same time, okay, rewind to Clinton, I think he had passed at this same point in time before we left for the state work period in August, 217 nominees by voice vote. Then you go to George W. Bush, 192 nominees by voice vote. Then you can go to Obama, 209 nominees that passed by voice vote. Then go to President Trump's first term, 4. Then go to President Biden's term, 44. And now go to President Trump's second term, 0. So when you are jumping through these procedural hurdles, you are inhibiting our ability to actually move things through the Senate in a multitude of ways. So I would say we are absolutely asserting our authority in a number of ways, and we'll continue to find ways to do better and be better in that for sure. But we've got to make sure that the obstruction stops so that we can get to work for the American people. And I certainly am going to work to be a part of that.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there. I know it's been a long slog. I've never seen a stretch of like this in the Senate.
Honest to gosh, Todd, it's unbelievable. And you think about the number of votes we've had overnight, like 30 hours on, or 27 hours on the floor and 14 hours and this and that. I mean, we understand the mission. We know that this is a moment in time and we have to do everything in our power to, you know, to cement this and to move the nation forward. But it is certainly something. It's rare that you see the Senate take more votes than the House, and at such a significant level.
We've also seen you wearing your comfortable shoes.
That's right. That's right. Listen, I gotta be ready. I gotta be ready to get after it at any point in time.
Yeah. Look, I really appreciate you coming on and explaining some of these things, the questions we have about what's going on in Washington. And yeah, thanks for your time here at the BCA conference.
Thank you. It's an honor to represent Alabama, and I promise I'm giving it everything I've got every day.
We'll be right back.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. Free professional development for educators and child care providers. Access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media. And all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
You're watching Alabama Public Television, celebrating 70 years of service to Alabama.
And welcome back to Capitol Journal here at the BCA Government Affairs Conference. I'm joined next by Alabama Senate President Pro Tem Garland Goedger. Senator, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. As usual, I appreciate it and having the time to spend with you.
Absolutely. Well, here at BCA, you've come here for several years, but now you're the leader of the Senate. Right. So I'm curious what you and your members actually get out of conferences like this.
First of all, you know, BCA is a wonderful conference. I think it's the largest that we have every year. Everybody wants to be at this conference, and partially because you're going to build relationships here. You're going to talk about what's been going on in the off session. And then when people come together, obviously there are work sessions for all of us to go to really focus on where are we going in the future, and then what has been happening in the past, and how is legislation that we've already passed, how is it affecting their own particular districts. And so as a rank and file member, when I first started coming here, it was great just to see everybody come together in the off session and really focus on where are we going in the future. Now that I'm President Pro Tem, it's a little different because my day is eaten up with meetings and people that are wanting my time, but that is good because they're wanting the same thing. You know, they're wanting, what are we doing for the next session? What have we done in the past? How is everybody coming together? How are we working with the House? How are we working with the executive branch? So it's a little bit more comprehensive where I am now, but it's really the same thing, which is really building relationships.
Well, you know, the session will be here before you know it. January may sound like a long way away, but it'll be here before you know it. So what might we see? It's an interesting session because it's an election year. That means it'll start earlier, and I assume end maybe earlier just because everybody's got to go home and campaign and everything. But y'all have had a couple of sessions of some big heavy lifts and everything. What kind of legislative focus might we see come January?
Well, first of all, you've got to realize that being an election year, everyone's really focused on back home. Even when they're coming back to the State House, there's going to be some other lifts that we're going to pick up that are going to be some major lifts, but really everybody is, because we're starting early and trying to focus on campaign that is coming up right after we get out of session. People want to know what their hometown is thinking, what their district is thinking, and making sure that we're covering those local needs for our districts back home. So that's going to be influenced into some of the heavy lifts that are going to be coming up. And then everybody's going to be talking about what happens after this session, because it's campaign time and we're going to have a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, and different leadership as we move forward. So,
well, there were a lot of those local bills that got caught up at the end, so I'm assuming some of those are going to need some attention as well. Speaking of that, the last time we talked on Capitol Journal, it was right after the session. I think it was the day after the session. Right. And the topic kept coming up about potential rules changes because of the frustration at the very end with Democrats filibustering, holding up bills, especially local bills. There's been some time between then and now, so I'm curious what the caucus talk is about that. Might we see potential rules changes upstairs in the Senate?
There's talk about that. You have to be very cautious, and when you are even talking about that, because the rules that can hurt you today are the rules that you need for tomorrow on your side to be able to pass something. So we're making sure that we're very diligent and methodical on anything that we are talking about changing and putting together on black and white so that we can make those rule changes. Those would actually have to be adopted in our organizational meeting, which is once every 4 years when we come back into the next quadrennium. But we were frustrated at the end of last year. The Democrats have never held up our local bills because all politics are local, and we allow that common courtesy to let your local bills pass. They didn't last year for the first time that I know of in the history of Alabama. So having that said, there is talk about that, and we're having talks on both sides of that aisle, not just on one side, to make sure that if we do this, that this is something that's going to benefit everyone, but we're going to be very cautious going forward.
Well, you've talked about, sometimes we think about business and economic development, and sometimes it's so much of a focus on cities, suburbs. The rural parts of Alabama sometimes get left out. You and your counterpart in the House have really made a focus on rural Alabama and lifting up rural communities. Talk about that, your partnership with the Speaker there, and what we might see develop out of that.
First of all, I have a great partnership with Nathaniel Ledbetter, the Speaker of the House. We work very well together, and that's not always been the case, but he and we do work well together. His focus and mine, since we both live in rural communities, have been making sure that rural Alabama is connected, because right now it is separated throughout, whether you're talking about rural health care, whether you're talking about agriculture, whether you're talking about economic development, whether you're talking about small business. All of those entities need to have a voice, but those voices need to be connected into one voice in the State House, because what they happen is the loudest voice and the largest voice usually in the State House really gets the grease, right? The key for us is to make sure that rural Alabama has a voice, because there's so many jobs that are produced throughout this whole state in rural Alabama, no matter if it's a small business or industry. But at the same time, right now it's haphazardly being injected into some of these bills that we have. And so some of the bills that we passed last year is what spurred this on, and it's very important for he and I to get together in both houses and making sure as we move forward into a new quadrennium after this session that we are on the same page and rural Alabama has a strong voice as we move forward.
Well, look, I really appreciate your time. We'll see you around the conference, and thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks for having us.
And now we'll send it to Randy Scott, who's caught up with convention delegates about their feedback on this year's conference.
Representative Jennifer Fittler represents the area where the Business Council of Alabama's 2025 conference is being held. She says it's a great opportunity for local, state, and federal leaders to gather and talk about the issues, such as healthcare needs.
The monies that are coming down from the federal government, from the big beautiful bill, the $500 million that we're going to be able to spend in our rural hospitals, that is so important to make sure that our rural hospitals continue.
Even if as these hospitals close, there's going to be a stress put on the hospitals in the urban areas that they are not prepared to take care of. I'm sorry, but there are not going to be a whole lot of additional beds built in the urban areas to take care of the needs of the people in the rural area of these hospitals closing.
Also, education concerns.
I am a public education product, and I push that because I worked in the public classroom for 23 years, and I'm excited about the future for our students. And then we want to dismantle education from the national state point of view. AEA is important. NEA is important, and the Department of Education is definitely important as relates to how we fund ourselves.
And Alabama's agriculture industry.
Things that are happening now because of the big beautiful bill. There's things in it that will really help move Alabama forward, funding for rural hospitals, and also we've talked about agriculture and the need for the farm bill to get passed.
Perhaps the biggest takeaway from this 2025 BCA conference here in Point Clear, Alabama, is the ability to bring federal leaders together with state leaders and local leaders to brainstorm on ways to improve Alabama in several aspects, from an economic standpoint to a healthcare standpoint, and even a technical standpoint.
It's a good idea to have a conference like this so that we can hear the needs, make sure that we understand the demands of the business community, and then respond as government to that so that we're ready to go to work when they are.
How do we have one person that can kind of bring everybody together so we can make sure
that we're all aligned and we can offer all the options that we need to address every single Alabamian to get them working, to get them in the workforce, to make sure that they are providing for their family and bringing a great contribution to our communities.
In Point Clear, Randy Scott, Capital Journal.
Joining me next is Congressman Shamari Figures. Congressman, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, man. Thanks for being here.
We're in your neck of the woods a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what have you gotten out of this year's BCA conference as an elected official at the federal level?
Look, it's always good to be here and hear from the business community and constituents in general about the issues that they're concerned about. I'll tell you, since we've been here, we've heard a lot about tariffs and the uncertainty and the potential impact that's going to have, on businesses here locally and their ability to be able to expand and grow. And it's just always good to have a good touch point with people to make sure that we are working in DC on the things that matter most to businesses down here.
Well, let me follow up on that, because we saw that polling that said voters want their elected officials to focus more on economic issues rather than social issues, and yet the social issues just kind of tend to dominate the conversation a lot. What did you, when you saw that polling, how did that impact you as an elected official and as somebody that has to be on the ballot and ask voters for their support?
Yeah, it's reinforcing. It's reinforcing the things that we've long known, that people at the end of the day, they care about their personal economic situation, their personal economic flexibility, the well-being of their families, the well-being of their future in terms of retirement and being able to send their kids to school if that's what they elect to do, or investments. So it wasn't surprising per se, but it's a reminder, and that's why we've been spending our time in Washington working on those sorts of issues. We spend a lot of time working on rural hospitals. That may not seem like an economic issue on its face, but when communities lose hospitals, the businesses and the jobs and the residents and the tax revenue goes with it. We just recently introduced legislation to remove the tariff fees associated with baby products, because the U.S. does not manufacture a ton of baby products, and so it costs money that people here do not have to be able to be spending more on those basic necessities.
Well, speaking of work in Washington, let's talk about the Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed. You've been speaking out about this because it has an impact here in the state, here in Alabama. I'm thinking about Medicaid. I'm thinking about SNAP and its effect on food banks and everything. Talk about what your concerns are about. It's law. It's right. It's law. What are your concerns, and how do we need to be looking at this from your perspective?
Look, I think it's similar to the earlier question about economics. And when I look at it, what I see is a bill that at its core provides a significant amount of tax relief and tax benefits to the wealthiest people in this country. And that's not the majority of my district. That's not the majority of this state. The individual median income in this state is just north of $31,000. And these are not the millionaires and people that earn in high six figures or even low six figures across this district. And so I believe that tax policy needs to be skewed towards providing the most benefit to the tax class that's the biggest, and not the tax class that's the richest. And we did all of this and made all of these cuts to programs like Medicaid, like SNAP, all at the expense of adding over $4 trillion to the national deficit. And so at the end of the day, I just don't think that trade-off is worth it for the people in District 2.
We're going to be talking more about that bill and its impact for years to come, I'm sure. Switching gears, we're getting to football season, and you've got legislation about name, image, and likeness, NIL. It's really changed the landscape of college athletics, and some would say in a negative way, right? Really, it's not the same sport as it was even 10 years ago or so. Talk about your legislation, what it does, and what needs to happen to, I guess, kind of right the ship when it comes to college athletics.
Look, I think everybody would agree that students should be able to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness when it's being used to make money for other institutions or businesses. And that's what this bill ensures. It ensures that right for student athletes to be able to do that, while at the same time providing some guardrails for the industry as a whole, so we don't continue to go down this sort of unchecked framework or in this unchecked territory related to NIL that really poses a long-term jeopardy to college athletics as we know it. And so this bill is first and foremost about protecting student athletes, making sure that they have access to the health care coverage that they need, making sure they have the right to finish college degrees if they come back, and making sure they have access to critical life skills that they need, including financial literacy and others. And so this bill aims to do that. It has bipartisan support. It's already out of committee, and it's something that we are continuing to work on to make stronger and make more palatable for everyone involved.
Well, speaking on behalf of a lot of college football fans, we hope something can get done with that. But it isn't. I mean, it is an issue that needs addressing, and I'm glad y'all are at least taking a look at it, and we'll be following that moving forward. Well, Congressman, thanks again for stopping by.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
The USS Alabama is a World War II-era battleship that first served in the Atlantic Theater, but was better known for helping to take Japanese-held islands in the Pacific between 1943 and 1945. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Alabama's state-of-the-art radar alerted the fleet to incoming aircraft, providing the Americans enough time to scramble fighters and decimate the attacking force. Later, the Alabama served during the Battle of Leyte Gulf and anchored in Tokyo Bay to unload Allied occupation forces. In 1964, the state of Alabama took possession of the battleship. Alabama school children raised $100,000 in nickels and dimes to help bring the ship to Mobile and create Battleship Memorial Park. The park features the Alabama, the World War II-era submarine USS Drum, and an American military aircraft collection. Battleship Memorial Park is one of the state's most visited attractions.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal's coverage on location here at the BCA Governmental Affairs Conference. Joining me next is Congressman Robert Outerholt. Congressman, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be with you. Thanks.
Well, I wanted to ask you at the top about Space Command. Y'all had this congressional panel, and I was almost surprised that it didn't come up because there's a lot of excitement about Space Command and the idea and the prognostication that it could be coming to Huntsville. Where are we on that, and when might we learn the final decision?
Well, any day now, I think, is the answer. Quite honestly, I think the president wants to personally be involved in the announcement. As you know, he's had a lot of things on his plate over the last several months, and especially with trying to get the one big beautiful bill through the House and the Senate, and trying to make sure that all the things are included in that doesn't get changed. But obviously, what's going on with economic situations, with the tariffs, with everything. But it's from all indications that we're getting is that there will be an announcement soon. So, there's been some indications that it might have been a week or two ago that there would have been an announcement, but we're not seeing any indication that it's not coming forward.
I see.
So I think just really getting the president to concentrate on this particular thing. This is very important, it's big, but obviously in his world there's a lot of big things going on. So this is not to minimize the importance of Space Command. It's just that I think he wants to make sure that he is involved with the announcement of it. Of course, obviously we know this was not something that was politically motivated. They did the unbiased research. Huntsville, North Alabama, that entire area up there showed that it was the best spot, hands down. So there's no political aspect of it, but I think the president, as you know, wants to be very involved, and this is something that's been near and dear to his heart. So I think he wants to be involved, and I think he's probably waiting for the right time. But again, there's no indication that it's going anywhere else.
Stagecraft is very important to Donald
Yes.
Trump. We know that. You are a senior appropriator, a cardinal, they call you on Capitol Hill. Talk about the appropriations process, where we are in that process. I was actually just talking with Senator Britt about it. There's some frustration at the Senate level. Where are we on that process? Might we see a continuing resolution? And kind of explain to our audience the difference between appropriating in regular order and then the alternative having a CR?
Well, as you know, and probably most of your listeners know, is that we start a new fiscal year on October 1st. That's the way it always is. So we're working on 2026 appropriations, and but we usually start in February, March with our hearings and start getting the bills ready, because there's 12 appropriation bills. As you referenced, there's 12 cardinals, 12 chairmen of the committees that handle every aspect of the federal government, whether it's every department, every federal program, every agency, are all fits neatly in one of those 12 subcommittees. The subcommittee that I chair is the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Education, and Department of Labor. So
second largest, by the way, right by defense, right?
Yes, it's the largest domestic, and defense is the only one that's larger. But it funds those three departments to make sure that they can keep doing what they're doing. And obviously the Department of Health and Human Services, because healthcare in this country, Department of Education. Of course, we're trying to change that and trying to, the president wants to do away with Department of Education as it is now, which I totally agree with. We need to have more control for the states. And then, of course, the Department of Labor. But we are to pass those 12 appropriation bills by September the 30th, so that when October 1st rolls around, we have all the 12 bills passed and ready to go. Now, the problem with passing them in an expeditious manner is the fact that you've got to get the House to pass all 12, you've got to get the Senate to pass all 12, and then obviously when they do that, they're not always going to be identical. Have to go to conference between the two, have to iron out the differences, then go back and pass it again, each individually or in a group, and each in the House and Senate, and then sent to the president for his signature. So there's a lot to go through that process, and when you're talking about spending that kind of money, when you're talking about spending over $1 trillion, and every member of Congress has an issue that they think is important that needs to be included, then it can get difficult sometimes. But we are in the process right now of trying to pass those appropriation bills. We've passed 2 so far in the House of Representatives. I think the Senate may have now passed 3. But we'll have a whole month of September, and that's what September will be focused on. Mm-hmm. But if we do not pass all 12, or the ones we have not passed, we do a continuing resolution, as you alluded to, which will just continue the funding from the previous fiscal year of FY25, and just carry over, and we'll say carry over for 30 days, 60 days, until we get the right timing. Mm-hmm. So, or until we get the negotiations worked out. Mm-hmm. So the goal is that government won't be shut down, but hopefully we can do a continuing resolution for maybe 30 days. So we'll probably have a continuing resolution for at least 30 days to give us a little bit more time. But at the end of the day, the goal is to pass all 12.
The true blocking and tackling of the federal government. While I've got you, I wanted to ask you about your involvement in America's 250th anniversary of the founding, of the Declaration of Independence. I know you're involved in the commission that's overseeing a lot of that. We've got a lot of excitement here in Alabama about that. Talk about your work on that and what we can expect.
Well, every state has a commission, a 250 commission, and a lot of your viewers will remember the bicentennial. I'm actually old enough to remember the bicentennial. I know it's hard to believe.
1976.
I actually was a young boy during that time, but I remember the bicentennial. And of course, that was easy to say, bicentennial. For the 200th, the 250th is a little bit more difficult, as we had alluded to earlier. It's called the semi-quincentennial. And so that's why everybody shortened it, says America 250.
250, yeah, we'll just keep it
there. And so each state has their own commission, but we have there's a national commission, just like there was a bicentennial commission, that sets up the celebrations and the things that goes on to celebrate America's 250th birthday. I'm honored to be one of the commissioners that serve on there's 4 House members. I'm one of 4 House members, and there's 4 in the Senate, and then some public citizens that's on the commission as well. So it is a great time to just to celebrate America. What my goal is, it's not to be political. We're not, political agendas are set aside. We're celebrating the greatness of America and our founding fathers of what they envisioned. And here we are 250 years later, and we're still have this country intact, and we still have the form of government that Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, George Washington, those John Adams, those individuals set forth 250 years ago, and it's still it's the longest lasting democracy on the face of the earth.
Really something to celebrate and to be proud of and to pass on to the next generation. Congressman, we're out of time. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Todd. Always good to be with you, and thanks for what you do for informing the citizens of Alabama about what goes on in Washington.
Absolutely. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
We'll be right back.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. Free professional development for educators and child care providers. Access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media. And all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
From 1820 to 1826, Cahaba was the first capital of the state of Alabama. The capital city was located at the convergence of the Alabama and Cahaba rivers because Governor William Wyatt Bibb had arranged for a free gift of land for that purpose from the federal government. An ancient Indian earthwork was found on the site, so the governor reused it as a dramatic centerpiece for the town plan. The sale of lots in Cahaba built the state treasury for the new state and paid for the first state house. Soon the frontier capital had 2 newspapers, numerous businesses, a theater, and nearly 1,000 inhabitants. Despite the loss of the capital to Tuscaloosa in 1826, Cahaba as a county seat grew into one of the wealthiest communities in the nation and did not become a ghost town until well after the Civil War. Cahaba was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. Today it is known as the Old Cahaba Archaeological Park.
And that's a wrap of our coverage of the BCA conference here at the Grand Hotel in Point Clear. A special thanks to the Business Council of Alabama for allowing Capital Journal unique access to document this important event. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.